All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership in Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Sherry,
and correspondent,
Jason Bill.
On cue, Jason. All right, so we are back again in studio. Back again. The world has been slowly evolving or regressing. I'm not really sure where I sit. But today we have a guest that you've seen before, and we love to kind of do our report card thing where they come in, bright eyed and bushy tailed, and then we check them back again after that session's over to kind of, see where they are. So I'm letting him introduce himself, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'm State Senator RaShaun Kemp, represent a portion of Fulton County in the Georgia legislature.
All right, so any events we want to cover first, or do we want to jump right into him? Anybody got anything that's pressing?
I just want to talk about the special session that's so recent. Like, can we just work our way back maybe to like where we landed and then kind of what you thought the session would be way back in January?
Yeah. One thing that is unique to my experience having served my first term is that we had a special session. Special sessions are kind of rare. They only occur outside of the regular legislative session when the governor calls the legislature back to Atlanta from all over the state. And this one was unique in that the governor was trying to redistrict our state. And pretty much that meant to silence Black voices and to reduce the number of Black legislators that are in the legislature. But even more important than that is the representation that comes along with that. Right. It's not just about the Black people that are in those seats. It's the experiences, the lived experience, the culture, the understanding of the issues in those communities and what we fight for. Yeah. That is what is most important. And so the big victory was the fact that Georgia showed up and showed out. I've never seen that many people in our Capitol, inside and outside, with signs, chanting, and making sure that they knew that if they did this, they were going to pay for it, and they retreated. So that was a huge victory for us. It just shows what happens when we come together, we raise our voices. So many people nowadays will say, well, what's the point of marches and rallies? This is the point, because when they see it, it is the physical representation of, okay, you done went too far. And that's what happened. And I'm very happy about that. We'll live to fight another day because it's very likely they will call us back into legislative session, especially if we make history by electing Keisha Lance Bottoms. But that just goes to show what can happen when we raise our voices and come together as a collective.
Well, it was weird because initially he said he wasn't. When everybody else started doing it, he was like, well, I'm not doing it. And then it was like another week later, it was like, it happens. I'm just like, but then I've always felt like Kemp wants to be his own man, and he will until Trump really puts pressure. And I feel like that's what happened. He was like, I'm good. I'm not doing anything. And I feel like Trump called and was like, no, you need to make this happen. And then it was like, bam, here we are. So I felt like when I looked at the protest, it was like, oh my God, there's actually white people here too. And not that there's never are, but I was like, there's a good bit of them here. Which is wild, because I was like, I feel like they figured out, we like, no, I know y'all are used to us doing it, but we gonna sit out a little bit. So you guys, so I feel like now they've evolved to a place like, no, we should probably show up too. So it was nice to see that, to see the mixture of people.
You mentioned us regressing. Like, that is a perfect example of even white people are like, no, we're not taking this country backwards. Like, that is literally us going backwards in time to when there were less Black and brown faces in our legislature. That's literally what's going to happen. They're going to wipe away all the progress that we've made over these last few decades. So, it was very encouraging.
I mean, it's for me, being old, it's a beautiful thing to watch, like to see other ethnicities show up. And now we can be like, no, we gave y'all a blueprint. This is what it's supposed to look like. Go do it. Right. We'll join you when we ready, but y'all go do it. Y'all need some experience. Y'all go do it. So to see them be the first ones to show up, it's like, oh, y'all not waiting on us again? Oh, okay.
So you're expecting another special session?
Yeah, we are.
Like during the lame duck time period?
Sometime in November is very likely when they'll do it. I truly believe that we have a major opportunity to elect Keisha Lance Bottoms as our next governor. And if we do that, they know that their chances of redrawing these lines for 2028 will be gone. But it's even more important that we do elect Keisha Lance Bottoms, because if they do that, then that at least gives us leverage to go into the next legislative session to say, like, if you want some of your priorities or your community's priorities to be passed, we're going to have to readdress this redistricting that y'all just tried to do. Or we show up in such strong numbers that they're like, look, we can't even do that. Like, we cannot call people back to the Capitol and redraw these lines.
Well, let me ask a question, because before the primaries happened, we had 3 different leaders, and none of them were backing Keisha. Is the chatter, does it sound different?
When you say 3 different leaders, what do you mean?
We had the minority whip, which was
some of our guests.
Yeah, some of our guests, and they were backing other people. And nobody, when I brought up Keisha, everybody was kind of like, Now that it's her, does the conversation sound more unified? Like, this is what we're doing?
Oh, 100%. We're totally unified. Worried. I will admit, I did not support her in the primary, but her win was so resounding.
That's what I said.
For there to be over a handful of candidates in this race, and she won by the margin that she won, the electorate was clear. Yeah. And, I think that's the great thing about Democrats this go round is we are unified, and we're saying, look, this is our nominee. And she did some great things when she was mayor. And I'm not going to hold it against her that she did not run for another term. She finished her term. And I believe that a lot of her what we perceived as baggage, some people may see as, an advantage. The fact that she was a mayor and she led through a very tough time. I still remember the video of her saying, go home. Oh, yeah. She did what she needed to do. And she made some great changes and has some things that are still, legacy, related that is happening in Atlanta right now. So I think she's going to be a great nominee. And I'm very encouraged by the fact that all of us, no matter who you supported in the primary, are behind Keisha Lance Bottoms. Whereas on the other side, with the Republicans, you have the lieutenant governor, the number 2 Republican in the state, saying he's still trying to decide if he's going to vote for their candidate. So I think that speaks volumes about where we are and where they are.
I think it's also like being from Atlanta and seeing online a lot of the conversations around Keisha Lance Bottoms. I think people forget that during the pandemic, she also took on the Police Foundation, which a lot of people, if you don't know Atlanta's history, this is the same foundation that basically went against the first Black mayor, which was the start of the missing and murdered Black children. Keisha Lance Bottoms spent a lot of time around making sure there was a memorial. If you think about the 80s, and it was her tenure where that really became acknowledged in our city and memorialized. The Police Foundation was not happy with her. And so I think that that's an important part of the conversation, because you have this same Police Foundation that is supporting this young man who is running against Keisha Lance Bottoms. I don't even want to say his name.
Not young. He ain't young.
I looked down. He's old.
Wrong adjective, but go ahead.
Okay. That was the most appropriate adjective. That was the most appropriate adjective in that moment, just thinking about some of the ads that he's put out and some of his tactics. I wanted to circle back and saying that to the importance of representation, being, down at the Capitol on, during the time of the special session. I was impressed to see the rural communities of Georgia. Yeah. I feel like they were the first that were there. In talking to a lot of the farmers, especially white farmers,
of people
who were like, we definitely need to see something different. So I wanted to see your thoughts on how the Democratic Party is reaching some of the far areas of the state and making sure that those voices are also heard in the upcoming election.
Yeah, one of the tours that we did as a Senate Democratic Caucus is we went down to Senator Freddie Powell Sims' district, which is down in Albany. And we toured farms. We talked to farmers. We talked to people in the rural community about their hospital and the importance of expanding Medicaid and the impacts that it's having, especially outside of Metro Atlanta. You have hospitals. 9 hospitals have closed in this state. And, some of them have been even here in Metro Atlanta. I live in South Fulton, where we just got the emergency medical center. But I think it's so important. And I think that we have learned our lesson as Democrats, that there are people outside of metro communities that voices need to be heard and respected, and make sure that they are included in the conversation. And that's the things that we've tried to do by going outside of, Metro Atlanta and making sure we're engaging those. And I know I've seen a lot of KLB. When I say that, I'm talking about Keisha Lance Bottoms. So I'm just used to saying that. I've seen a lot of her work going outside of Metro Atlanta and engaging those communities. And I think it's important for folks to understand that even Senator Raphael Warnock, who is on the Agriculture Committee, he's the one that fought to ensure that Black farmers get what they need, that Georgia gets what we need in terms of agriculture. That's our number one business industry in the state. And I serve on the Agriculture Committee. So that was one fascinating thing also from this experience, this, urban metro boy serving on the Agriculture Committee. But I think it just goes to show that you can be from an urban city, but you can also make sure that folks outside are included in the conversation. And, that day, them coming down to the Capitol just showed like they care just as much about, politics and policy as people in Atlanta do.
I'm interested. What were those conversations like with farmers? Like, what are they saying?
Their biggest concern is cost. I mean, that's, everybody's concern is that, but it's healthcare. Like, they know that their communities are losing people and they're not gaining people, because why would I go to a city? Why would I move my family to a community when there is not an OBGYN for my wife or for, my daughter? So they're concerned about that. Education is critically important to them because if you can't attract people to your community, it's hard to attract teachers, and it's hard to keep teachers. As soon as, opportunities come, people see on Instagram, well, wait a minute, Atlanta is the highest paid district in the state. I'm going to go there. So we have to do more to support their communities. So like their issues are very similar to ours. But, with the fear of like, God, like the community I grew up in, I see it dying before my eyes. And a lot of it is as a result of policies that our state carries out. Like we argue we're the number one state to do business. I would argue we should be the number one state to live and raise a family. That should be the most important thing, because when we hang our hat on just being a number one state for business, we are doing it at the cost of people being paid above minimum wage or being respected or, so I think there is a balance that needs to be had in the state. And I think that we can do that if we change who is in elected office.
Did they have a manpower issue? Like, because I know I'm from South Carolina, so I remember seeing truckloads of probably immigrants coming during the summer to do, and now when I go home, I don't see any of that. Yeah. So I'm wondering, is that something they kind of talked about on the table?
I mean, the interesting thing is you will not, at least it didn't come up in conversations that I had, like, oh, we gotta, really, be forceful on immigration and things like that, because the people that are working in their farms are immigrants, And I think a lot of times the misunderstanding is, well, people from rural Georgia are the ones that's like really pushing for these strong immigration policies. Yes, we want closed borders, but also we want people to be respected, and they want people to have a path to citizenship, because they know that these are the people that are leaving their homes and coming to the United States for better lives. And they're the ones that are taking the jobs that many of us Americans are not taking.
And we need to be honest about that. We're not taking jobs.
Well, to add to that, immigrant and migrant families. So one of the things that I learned when we were doing a lot of work in North Georgia, which they rely on a lot of immigrant, but also migrant families to work their farms. I won't get into their secrets of how they house them and all of those things. Yeah. But I do feel like it's important to highlight that Georgia has a lot of migrant families. We see that in our public education system. So we have people who have legal status, but because of the jobs that are offered, they are often mobile and moving from place to place, season to season based on their jobs. Right. My question goes back to, I didn't want to leave from the rural areas too quick, because we know Georgia is also known for our trees. The beauty of that, it also keeps us cool. A lot of concerns from the rural areas. You mentioned hospitals that have been closed, and some of those hospitals are turning into data centers where they're seeing immediate impacts to environmental health. So I'm just curious about what the buzz is in the legislature around data centers, how they are replacing human needs, specifically hospitals.
The data center issue is a huge issue at the Capitol. Unfortunately, they have a very strong lobbying arm and have so much sway and power with Republicans. We had a great opportunity to put in some regulations and even just to say, like, look, the energy and the water usage that you all are going to consume, you're responsible for carrying your fair share. Like, you are responsible for carrying your load. And we're going to make sure in Georgia that that is not put off onto the consumers. They wouldn't even do that. And that was a bill that was actually carried by the chair of the Finance Committee, who was a Republican, but they, pushed, him and they watered his bill down. So that's something that is very important to us. We feel like, I even introduced a bill that said that if there are data centers trying to come to your community, your local city or county cannot go into a non-disclosure agreement with those companies to hide how much water and energy they're going to use. They wouldn't even let that pass. So that is why it's so important. Like, all these issues that people really care about. You see any town hall about a data center, that room is full because people don't want them in their communities. That includes people outside of Metro Atlanta. And unfortunately, the Republican Party is turning a blind eye to it and saying, we're going to go with what these, lobbyists in the hallway are telling us. Like, no, we don't want any regulations. Or they try to say, well, the PSC is handling it. Well, the PSC is run by Republicans. Right. And so that's why it's so important for us to elect Democrats up and down the ballot, because there is a tone deafness that is occurring with Republicans. And unfortunately, it all goes back to money. If you look at, who is contributing to who has PACs and, things like that, that is unfortunately what is happening. And until we change who is in elected office, they're still going to be able to do whatever they want to do. And you're going to see a proliferation of data centers in Georgia. Georgia is the second highest area for data centers outside of Metro DC area.
Yeah, like Virginia
area. And a lot of people don't know that. Like, they're all coming here to Georgia. Like, the number 2 place in the United States. And I've seen some figures that say, like, we're like at the top 5 in the world of data centers. So we need to do something about it. And unfortunately, Republicans won't allow us to.
Yeah. I'm really curious about, for turnout, maybe going back to a little bit of our earlier conversation for thinking about the governor's race, just 2026 elections period, and the different groups and the need to mobilize those different groups, how important they are. We've talked about young people a lot in the last few times that we had a podcast. And I also want to think a lot more about other communities, like communities of color, especially. So we just had FIFA here, which several matches here. I'm so sad that L3 is not moving forward because now I don't really want to watch it anymore. I was really supportive of Mexico, but I do want to know, like, for other voting blocks, and like, do you hear a lot from in District 38? I don't know about the makeup of your district, but I do wonder for different brown voters, and especially for like our Mexican families that are really, really, really a huge voting block in the state of Georgia and who have voted Democratic federally for a while, and in the 2018. 2022 elections, we're still majority Democrat. I don't know what to make of Kemp and Abrams, but I do believe that was a little bit closer. I think that they were trailing a little bit closer together. So, like, what do you kind of expect, or what is sentiment that you've heard from your voters for that voting block, if there's anything that you've heard? Yeah,
a lot of people don't know my heritage. I'm Black and Hispanic. My dad is half Black and half Mexican. And we just recently went to a luau that Galeo, which is one of the Hispanic organizations in the state, they did it for KLB, Keisha Lance Bottoms. To get used to that. I'm just used to it's a lot to see.
You say it, then it registers.
All right. They did one for her. And the turnout was huge. It was so many people there. There has absolutely been a shift because that has been a concerning thing where Latino voters have been, gravitating, in more, not in majority numbers, but in more numbers than we like to see to the Republicans. But that has shifted. In any poll you look at, you'll see that they've like swung back to the Democrats. And then also a very encouraging sign was our primaries. Way more Democrats came out and voted than Republicans. So that shows you that the energy, the momentum is on our side. And I think that, the way that Trump and Republicans have handled ICE, they have gone way too far. One of the things, especially like for the Latino community, like I've hated to see is like, it's almost like turning on your own. Like, I'm here legally, but those people that are here because they've escaped, being killed or that's them. That's not me. But I think even they are seeing like, wait a minute, they're rounding up people that look like me, regardless of, their status, and people are literally losing their lives being chased recently in Maine. And I can't forget, I forget.
A Venezuelan gentleman.
And like that's happening to everyday people. So I think, they've gone too far when it comes to immigration, but also other policies, every policy decision that they make impacts Black people just as much as it impacts Latino communities. And in some instances, even more. And, they're saying enough is enough. So I think that's really encouraging, too.
Wait, do you speak Spanish?
I don't.
I was gonna say.
I need to learn it. A little bit. Yes.
Well, we all do that.
But even if you say that, people think you speak more than you do. Like, okay, that's too far. But I tell people I want to learn.
Having lived in 2 Spanish-speaking countries, I feel like I should. I know what they're saying, but the English teacher in me is wanting to correct it because the verb always comes.
They have.
I want to go back to something you mentioned in regards to the Afro-Latina communities.
Yeah.
And a lot of those voices are not heard before ICE, this year really became a big thing. But last year, there were a lot of Black women, I mentioned this on a previous show, that were really ringing the alarm about ICE being stationed in Black communities. And the Black Missing Persons nonprofit that is doing some phenomenal work, major shout out to them. They have reported that Black people have come up missing 3 times higher than before ICE was actually in our communities. What are you seeing around legislation that local Democrats are pushing to help ensure that it's not just the immigrants or migrants who are safe, but all of us who are safe from ICE?
Yeah, I mean, we put in the law already is that they're not supposed to go into churches, into schools and things like that. And so we tried to pass, laws that said that recertified that pretty much. That said, like, state law is that they are not allowed to go into these, places, or that they cannot wear masks in our state, Unfortunately, none of those passed.
Sure.
They, won't even allow them to have a hearing. And that's part of the problem, that, from my experience, not passing the bill is one thing, but not even giving it the opportunity to have debate is another. And that is a direct example of why voting matters, because at the end of the day, like, yes, bills may pass, they may fail, but they have such a stronghold. When I say they, I mean Republicans, that we don't even have the opportunity to have hearings on bills because I believe, one, they know how silly they sound when they try to defend some of the policies that they have to follow because they blindly follow Donald Trump. But also they have the fear that, if we bring these to our committees, it's possible that they may pass. And, so that's why ultimately these elections this year are so important, because any issue that we have experienced in the state, in this country, we have tried to address through legislation. Like, it's not like, oh, well, you Democrats just, go down to the well. When I say the well, that's where we go down and speak, give our speeches. And you're just, fighting against, everything, or you're all bluster, all talk, no action. we actually have a bill for every single issue that we feel needs to be addressed in the state, whether it be expanding Medicaid, raising the minimum wage, addressing ICE. Like all of these things have bills that have been filed, but because of the makeup of our legislature, they don't even
majority
get a
Republican, and our rules committee, which a rules chair, and like just the basic structural rules that determine kind of like what moves forward and what doesn't move forward. Defense is sometimes the best you can do, and defense is also important.
That's right,
because it also pisses people off when they don't hear anybody responding to what is a lot of wild stuff, and that does require a lot of response. I had one more question about just sort of maybe the federal Trump, maybe like the federal climate, and then the state of Georgia. Like, what do you make of some of what you were mentioning earlier on the Republican side, what we saw during the primaries, like the split primary for these two horrible people, which ultimately went for the horrible person that was not endorsed by Trump.
Slick Rick.
Right. that horrible one.
Yeah.
But what do you make of that? Like, do you think that says something about, because I mean, some of this, there's a lot of political theater, but when I think about ICE and Georgia being a priority state for a top enforcement state for whatever reason, and all of these lawsuits being just dismissed, like that they've been trying to go after protesters, ICE protesters in the state of Georgia. I think over half of those have been like completely thrown out. There's just so much time waste. Right. And like, I feel like political theater and distraction, but like, what do you make of, just the primary results? Like, what do you think that could mean about the Republicans, the Republican voters anyway?
Well, just in general, my concern with their primary race is it shows that anyone with a lot of money can come in and buy the results of an election.
Yeah.
That should be alarming to anyone. I am not, I'm going to disclaim this, I'm not a fan of Burt Jones, but you had somebody that has served in elected office, that is the number 2 in the state, had the support of the president of the United States and the popular Republican governor, and still lost because this man that has made money off the backs of our healthcare system, who has no big contracts with the state, and has enriched himself, was able just to swoop in and buy an election. That is alarming, right? And our Supreme Court just continues to give, open the door for, any amount of money to be poured in, and treat, businesses and PACs just as, people, as people, right? So that is a big concern of mine. The encouraging thing is ultimately they still had fewer people come out and vote, right? Yeah. So they're not as motivated. Trump is continuing to give them like major disservice. Like he just cares about himself. That's good for us because any other normal politician would not go on the air on a Thursday night and talk about these crazy unfounded, conspiracy theories, considering the fact that, you're trying to get people elected across the country. So, that's concerning. But the encouraging thing is we're motivated. He may be able to buy, ads, but he can't, buy your vote. So I think ultimately we have a very strong shot. I am concerned that you have somebody that has said that he is going to be Trump with a Southern tone. Both of them did everything they can to suck up to who is arguably the worst president this country has ever seen. So, in many ways, they weren't too much alike because they just really, can I cuss? Okay. They really just were both kissing his ass, and that is what they will continue to do. I mean, Donald Trump's coming here next weekend.
Slick Rick going to schools?
Yes. And Slick Rick has already said that he's going to, go there, be with him. So if people have a very clear choice, they can continue to have policies and have a state that is going to open the door, to your point earlier, to ICE and say, y'all can do whatever you want here in the state, or you can elect somebody that has actually done something as mayor and say, you know what, we're not going to work with ICE. They're not going to house people in our jails. We're not going to open our jails to them. So, they have a clear choice to make this November, and I think people will make the right choice.
Well, my question is, if everybody backed the other guy and this guy wins, did it trigger an infighting? That's what I'm hoping for, that it triggers an infighting. It's like, none of us want you here. Like, so did it trigger something like that, or was it just like, okay, well, I guess.
One of the things that I enjoyed so much was I sit next to probably one of the most conservative senators in the state Senate, and they were furious at Rick Jackson because he put out mailers, and in the mailers it pretty much said like all the Republicans that are in office are corrupt. They aren't doing anything. So there is a huge divide and a huge fracture within their party. Yeah, they're going to try to make it seem like, oh, we're all unified behind him. But I mean, at least Burt Jones has said, you know what? I don't know if I can support him. And I think that speaks volumes about where they are when you have the person that you were in the runoff with has still yet to endorse you. Whereas on the Democratic side, I mean, even just this week, I've seen another tweet from Jason Estevez, who came in number 2, saying he's 10 toes down for Keisha Lance Bottoms. So yeah, they have a lot of, wounds to heal. And that bodes well for us.
I know we're winding down on time, and that was a perfect segue to public education, which is a huge topic and concern for Georgians, especially Republicans who, Slick Rick, let's go with that. Yeah. He also, in a lot of his mailers, were blaming current Republicans for the closure of public schools and hospitals. So I wanted to circle to future redistricting. Why is that so important to human service programs?
Yeah.
Specifically for Georgia, I'm curious about your thoughts because I know you're an advocate for grandparents as well. But in our state, grandparents, caretakers who are raising children have been hit the hardest with the changes to WIC, SNAP, Medicaid, Medicare access. So I'm curious about some of the things that Slick Rick has been pushing is that he wants to, reform. I hate him even using reform, but to reform education and trying to push a play in Florida where they have removed the local taxes and property taxes from the public schools. So I wanted to just get your thoughts on public education for Georgia, how that can be a driving factor or force for people to come out and actually vote in November.
Yeah. One of the things that people have to understand is you hear them saying, oh, we're going to eliminate property taxes. The way that we fund education, the majority of the dollars that goes towards our schools and districts comes from property taxes. Are property taxes too high? Yes. Eliminating them is not the right answer because what you will then have is you will have this regressive tax that is now put in place. In order to make up for them cutting property tax, what the Republicans tried to do, which is another great thing we were able to successfully do in the special session, is we killed all of their sales tax increase bills. So what they tried to do was say, okay, well, you can drop the property tax percentage and you can then raise sales tax. And what that does is now seniors, now renters, and even people that own homes are paying more when they go to the grocery store, when they go buy school supplies for their kids. It's just shifting the burden, right? And we would argue that it's regressive because what you're now doing is you're saying those of us who are not making as much, who don't own property, are now paying for property owners to get a property tax cut. And when you try to eliminate property taxes, you are saying we're doing away with the services that our counties and our cities normally provide. In order for counties and cities to provide police, emergency services, education, healthcare, all of that comes through property taxes. And so that is why we're saying there's a smarter way of trying to address affordability. And a big concern with Slick Rick is here you are a healthcare executive. You own a healthcare company, but you will not say that this state should expand Medicaid.
Really?
Yes, he will not support Medicaid expansion. And this state is leaving money on the table by not expanding Medicaid because the federal government matches the amount of money that we put in. In addition to that, we have to have more people that have insurance in order for us to sustain the hospitals that we have in our communities. Right. And he knows that. And so here you are, someone that has clear understanding of the healthcare industry for you to make all these billions of dollars that you can just pour into a race. But you're saying policy decision that makes sense, we're going to just ignore that for politics reason. And, so that's concerning. You touched on education. I will say something positive that happened that I'm very proud of was we expanded our Literacy Act this year. Mm-hmm. And now as a result of that, every elementary school is now going to have a literacy coach, reading coach in their schools because we have to double down and do everything that we can to address literacy when we're still seeing numbers where 70% of our kids aren't reading on grade level. Yeah. So the state is, that is the very encouraging thing. We're doing something about that.
Thanks to the Republicans. We also have to remember that Governor Kemp.
Republicans and Democrats. Go ahead.
Well,
okay, wait, you're going to say something positive or negative?
No, the Republican governor was the one who commissioned the removal of reading teachers because I was a certified reading teacher and he pushed that being removed from our schools, which kind of put us in that tailspin that we're in now with the literacy crisis specific to Georgia. So thank you for what you've done with legislation. And I am curious about, we call this organizers who are on the ground. The purple wave or the purple belt here in Georgia, the area between Columbus and Augusta. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people are motivated to vote, but there is still a stronghold of Black men in particular in those areas that are just not motivated. Mm-hmm. So curious to see how Democrats are not saying that all areas across the state are not important, but from Columbus to Augusta over the last decade and a half, we've seen increased numbers of voters moving into the Democratic Party. So just curious to see what is the on-the-ground strategy to encourage voters who have not voted in recent elections to really take in consideration the seriousness of human service programs, hospitals closing, et cetera, so forth, and getting them out to vote.
Yeah, well, the party is doing a very good job. We have a coordinated campaign that is doing great work. I mean, you have offices opening all across the state. And while you see the other candidate jumping in and, visiting our businesses and using them as photo ops, we're actually doing the work on the ground to engage voters. Or, the fact that he went to a barbershop and went to a Black-owned business. People, I will say this now, please do your research. Don't just let anyone in your house. I am not just going to let some stranger come into my house. I'm going to know who they are before I allow them in. And especially if I'm going to take a picture with them, and I think that speaks to the importance of why politics is so important. Politics impacts every facet of our lives. Mm-hmm. And you talk about men, it's so important for us to understand that all of the policies that are in place, that are not in place, is as a result of somebody clicking a button under the gold dome or saying, we're not going to hear that bill. Or, you have a situation where a candidate that is opposed to everything that your customers and you stand for, and you open your business to them without doing your homework. And that just shows opening your house and letting somebody in can be a detriment. And it's our responsibility to understand politics and to say, you know what, I at least have to have a basic understanding of what's going on, because politics is going to impact you in some sort of way. Mm-hmm. And it's better to be ready than to have to get ready when it comes to your doorstep. And it could be a detriment to your business, to your livelihood, to your family. A lot of people, just decided not to vote. And, we have to engage those people and make sure that we are listening to what their issues are, their concerns are, and addressing them with policy, or even showing them how the policies that we already are pushing are going to impact, their lives in a positive manner.
So let me ask this, because we've talked about what Republicans are not in favor of. What are they in favor of? What are they passing through the House? What are they trying to get through? What is their priorities?
That is a good question. I mean, The one thing that we can agree on is education.
Right.
But, even when it comes to the literacy,
the data
I would say,
and the tax eliminations and.
Yeah. So we did pass the literacy bill. Unfortunately, at the same time, they try to pass bills that is taking money away from our public schools because they want to have more vouchers. Right. What else?
I meant to ask you that, though, if we could spend a little bit more on education, because I was wondering, do those things compete? Because Literacy Act, I think we were all excited about, we talked about, but then I'm like, but how do you but you have that, then you have like the workforce, like the non-traditional investments, right? Like trying to get folks towards trade schools. And then there's the college affordability and then private school vouchers. I'm like, how do those things all, do you not need to just like focus on one area and like make the investment there?
Yeah. The great thing that we did with our budget this year, for the first time ever, there's now a needs-based scholarship. For the longest, we just had hope where it was like academic-based, right? Now it's called the Dreams Act, Dream or Dreams, one of the two. And it's like $300 million that has now been put into place to allow for students who need assistance to be able to get it. And Georgia's never done that. So that was huge, right?
Yeah, because South Carolina has it, because I have it. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
Kudos to y'all. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and it's set up as a trust fund to where like it keeps getting money. So it keeps growing. So that was great. With the voucher thing, that's a problem because what they're doing is giving families who already likely have kids that are in, private schools or already can afford it because they were given $6,500. The vast majority of private schools in the state cost more than that.
Right.
So, if I'm a family, I'm still going to have to pay double that in order to send my child to a private school. And so that's our argument is, okay, y'all passed this bill. One, there should be some accountability measures. And I had a bill that tried to address that and they wouldn't even let it get a hearing. But also, like, if you're going to do this, it needs to be more targeted. If you really want to help the kids that are stuck in failing schools, give them the money that they need to be able to send their child to that private school and ensure that a parent that is making $100,000 is not getting it, but they're not willing to do that.
Yeah. Because it's not about increasing access for different income thresholds. It's about tax cuts for wealthy families already.
That's exactly it.
All right, so we're down to probably the last 10. So I want to see, this is personal.
Okay.
So what was the biggest thing that scared you that came through the floor? Be it got passed or didn't get passed?
Well, definitely the special session was the biggest thing. That would have had a monumental impact on Congress. So they were going to get rid of a congressional seat. And speaking about resources, that is, your representative is who fights for the resources from the federal government to come down to your district. And what they were going to do was, it's called, cracking and packing. They were going to crack our communities into various districts, meaning they're diluting our voices, or they were going to pack us, like my district, for example. They would put us like all in one district. So fewer people are representing the issues that matter to our communities. And in addition to that, you were going to see a whitewashing of our legislature. And that matters. Like, representation is so important, coming from somebody who was the first Black openly gay man to be elected to our state Senate. It is so important for us to have our voices at the table. And when you whitewash the history that we've made, that is going to have an impact on the communities that we represent. And so that was a huge victory for us. Like, I cannot stress how important that was. And the fact that people were able to see what happens when we do come together. Like, we needed that. Like, we need to see, like, okay, it's not just when you have to go vote. It's when they try to do these crazy ass policies, we need to speak up too, and we can stop them from doing it. So that's probably the thing that scared me the most.
Representation also matters. We spent a week recently in DC, and when you talk about the whitewashing of our government, a lot of the staffers are privileged. They don't know what poverty is, or coming from a household that you may have a single dad, for example, or you may have grandparents that are raising school-aged children. When you don't have representation in the room, and I wrote this down to highlight, it definitely changes the economic and the educational passport, the freedom for the majority of modern American families. So I'm glad that you highlighted representation and why, again, what I've seen with Slick Rick, he is really focusing in on unengaged and uneducated voters.
Absolutely.
So how do we reach this population, which a lot of them are impacted negatively by the policies that we're seeing pushed by Republicans?
And I will just add, that is encouraging for us to see because they know that they are losing. For him to have to try to engage our voters, they know that in order for them to win, they have to now try to peel some people off. And in addition to that, Georgia is now a majority minority state.
Yes, it is.
And so they know that they are losing power. And this is their last attempt, the redistricting stuff, to try to hold on to power. While, I hate to see him in some of our businesses and things, that also is a sign to us in the political space that, like, okay, y'all know, like, y'all are losing because you're having to now try to peel off some people for your electorate.
Yeah, but like, just imagine districts that look like, if you're familiar with the South Cobb area, like Austell and Mableton, and like, say that's your district, but like your rep is like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah,
like, and like that's
exactly.
And this is her community. This is for the community she's representing.
That's right. Yeah.
I know we only have a few minutes, but heterosexual Black men and the church are also areas that he is targeting. What can we do to ensure we don't see a repeat? Because these were also areas that were targeted when Stacey Abrams ran. And so I feel like there was a lot of work on the ground that has been done, but I am concerned about what I'm seeing on social media with ads that are centering Black churchgoers and Black heterosexual men.
I point to Raphael Warnock. He is a pastor. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the greatest fraternity in the world. He is a United States Senator. And he is somebody that I think is a perfect representation of when policy, religion, belief can come together and understand that we are better when we love our neighbor, when we are doing things that are going to improve our communities. And I think that I just think of him because I think it's so important for us to understand that the narrative sometimes that is out there is not the reality on the ground.
Right.
And they know that. That's why they put out these pictures and things like that. But, that's not to say that we don't have to do the work, because we are. And I think that the great thing is, like we talked about rural Georgia earlier, like I am encouraged now. I guess I am in the inner circle, I guess, I'm now considered a politician. Like, we know we have to make sure that our voices are heard and understood. And like, we're doing the work to do that.
It's wild that you put this in quotation that you are.
I know. I hate saying that. I hate saying I'm a politician.
You have to.
You can say public servant.
Public servant. Yeah, there we go.
I know sound is cute. You say seven.
Yeah.
All right. So last thing, what are you most proud of? In your first term, what did you leave with? Like, what did you leave with?
I'm most proud of that. I'm one of a handful of Democrats that can say I passed a bill and it was signed into law by the governor. Even in these tense, trying times, like, to pass a bill that is going to impact every kid in this state, that addresses literacy and make sure that our teachers are taught properly how to teach our kids to read, is a legacy item that is going to live, longer than me, and to do that in my first year it blew my mind that I was able to do that. But I think it speaks volumes to how I was able to come down to the legislature with all of my experience and work with people that, when we leave this conversation, you're going to go vote for something that is stripping away my rights. But, also that's something that, like, is encouraging. Like, even some of the Republicans that are down there, I said some, I really like them. And that was a lesson that surprised me a lot. I thought we were going to get down there, I'm just going to hate and can't stand you. And, there's going to be tense. But I really like them. And I think that they are good people that are put in really tough situations because of a president that has a strong hold on a party. But, I am very proud of the fact that I was able to pass a bill and the governor actually signed it into law.
Oh, no, we teachers, we thank you because I
Thank
teach,
you.
so we definitely thank you because
and for more than just the pay raise, I'm sure.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I mean, listen,
And we got to do that too.
It's a thing.
It's important. It's important.
We want to
That's
come to
right.
work with some financial incentive. So yeah, we
Yes.
definitely, appreciate that part. All right, final thoughts. What are your final thoughts? What do you want to leave?
Final thought is get out and vote, people. Like, it is so critically important. No time is more important than now. I know people say that all the time, but like people always think, oh, it's sexy to vote for the president. It's even more sexier and important for you to vote in these midterm elections because we're the ones that are making the decisions that it impact your daily lives much more so than what happens in the White House. And so that's why it's so important for us to get out and vote. People always ask me, like, how can I help you? You can help me by electing Keisha Lance Bottoms because the dynamics under the Gold Dome are going to drastically change. And it's going to give us an opportunity to have bills heard and passed that impact our communities in a positive way. And so I can't stress enough how important it is to get out and vote and tell your cousins, friends, all them to get out and vote because that's how we're going to flip the state and make sure that our community's priorities are put first. We're not just about doing business. We're about people living happy and fulfilled lives and being respected in the process as a full person in every policy decision that we make.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. Actually, you go last. Final thought.
I just echo the same thing. I'll just say that even when you don't have a triple majority across your House, your Senate, your governor, even a state just having some competition at some level of government changes so much about how parties have to show up and what kind of crap Republicans can write, how easily they can pass it through, how little hearing, how little attention. For the sake of having better government, it's important that there is far more competition than there has been in the state for a very long time. So I would just echo everything our guest said.
Me too. Seconds. And I would say make a plan to vote. It's vitally important that we reach unengaged and uneducated voters. I would hate for us to be set back because people were bought to go out and vote and they didn't really understand the system and how it works. So make sure you have a plan to vote and make sure you're reaching the unengaged and uneducated voters.
Because if we don't, they will.
That's yes, right. They will.
If we don't, they will.
Well, they are.
That's
that part. Putting it out there now.
Yeah.
Reach them.
That part. All right, so we want to thank once you've been here twice, you're not really a guest.
Okay, that's cool.
Yes.
I
don't want to say guest. Once you've been here twice, you're not really a guest.
Yeah.
So we want to thank our extended family.
There we go.
Senator Kemp and to the correspondent and co-host. We will see you again, same time, same place, on the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo Rice, and co-host,
Simone Sheree.
and correspondent,
Jason Biel.